Embeddables are simple Java objects. They provide an easy way to define and group a set of attributes that become part of your entity. Developers often use them to create reusable mapping information and handle them using the same piece of business code. Unfortunately, the JPA specification and Hibernate until version 6.0.0 required your embeddable to have a default constructor. This might be okay if you are fetching an entity from the database. Hibernate then automatically sets all attributes before providing the object to your business code. But a default constructor is not always a great idea. For example, if some of the attributes are mandatory and you instantiate embeddables in your business code or frontend. In that case, a constructor that sets all mandatory attributes would be a much better fit. Since Hibernate 6, you can easily define how Hibernate instantiates and initializes your embeddable. You can use that, for example, to remove the requirement of a default constructor. I will show you how to do that in this video. Hi, I'm Torben Jansen. If you want to build incredible efficient persistence layers with Hibernate and Spring Data JPA, please subscribe and click the bell to get new videos every week. And also don't forget to like this video if you found it helpful. An embeddable is a composition of multiple attributes and their mapping definitions. You can use it as an attribute type in one or more entity classes. When doing that, all attributes of the embeddable become part of the entity object and follow its lifecycle. Here you can see the definition of the address embeddable. If you want to rely on Hibernate's default mapping for all its attributes, you only need to annotate the class with an embeddable annotation. If you're not already familiar with this mapping, I recommend checking Hibernate's documentation or watching the embeddable lecture of the Advanced Hibernate course included in the Persistence Hub. After you define the embeddable, you can use it as an attribute type in your entity classes and use it the same way as any other entity attribute. In this example, all attributes of the address embeddable become part of the author entity and get mapped to the author table. By default, Hibernate would call the default constructor of the address embeddable. After that, it uses reflection to set all its attributes when you fetch an author entity from the database. Since Hibernate 6, you can customize the instantiation of the embeddable by providing an EmbeddableInstantiator. Let's use this to avoid the default constructor of the address embeddable and use a constructor that sets all attributes instead. This requires two minor changes to the address class. I need to add the additional constructor, and I need to register my EmbeddableInstantiator. You can do that by annotating the embeddable class or an entity attribute of your embeddables type with EmbeddableInstantiator. In the next step, you have to implement the EmbeddableInstantiator interface. This isn't complicated. The interface only defines three methods. One method checks if an object is an instance of the handled embeddable class. Another one checks if an object is of the same class as the embeddable, and the last method instantiates the embeddable object. Here you can see the address instantiator class I referenced in the EmbeddableInstantiator annotation. As you can see, the instantiate method contains the code to instantiate and initialize the embeddable. The implementation of this method is, of course, application-specific. But there's one thing I need to point out. The method parameter supplier values access contains the attribute values selected from the database in the alphabetical order of their attribute names. In the code, you can see that I get the three values from the supplier. I assign them to named variables and cast each of them to string. This mapping might cause maintainability issues in the future, but it at least makes the code better understandable. If you have a better idea for this, I would love to read about it in the comments. After you have defined and registered the EmbeddableInstantiator, you can use your embeddable in the same way as any other embeddable. You can use it as an attribute type on one of your entity classes and annotate the attribute with embedded. After that, you can use the attribute like any other attribute in your business code. When I execute this code, you can see in the log output that Hibernate mapped all attributes of the address embeddable to the author table and used the address instantiator to instantiate the address object. As you saw in this video, the EmbeddableInstantiator contract introduced in Hibernate 6 gives you more flexibility when working with embeddables. It gives you full control over the instantiation and initialization of your embeddable objects. You can use this for various things. You could perform additional business logic or transform or calculate attribute values before instantiating the embeddable. Or you can avoid the default constructor and call a constructor that fully initializes your embeddable object instead. Okay, that's it for today. If you want to learn more about Hibernate and Spring Data JPA, you should join the Persistence Hub. It gives you access to all my video courses, including one about Spring Data JPA and another one about Hibernate performance tuning, 2 monthly Q&A calls, monthly coding challenges, a community of like-minded developers, and regular expert sessions. And if you liked today's video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe below. Bye!